And we are recording on Thursday, February 1st, 2024 at 10:07 a.m. Eastern Time with Senator George Borello and Miss Bobbie Cox. And we have covered this topic of New York concentration camp legislation. And whenever I bring up that, I always say this. And that is a crazy sentence to say in itself. New York State medical concentration camps. But it's been that way since Miss Cox first came on. And when we first listened to it, people were like, I haven't heard about this. And as the shows would go on over the months and years, it would just keep coming up. And people would say, yeah, have you heard of this? And I'd send them an old episode and be like, yeah, it is happening here. And I think there's just this general feeling of that it can't happen. There's a phenomena where I forget what it is, but it's for the truckers in Australia in the outback where they will be in the middle of nowhere for days. And I forget what the actual phenomena is, but if they see a single tree on the horizon, there's some weird psychological, neurological phenomena where there is a greater than average chance that they will hit the tree, despite them seeing it from miles away and there being nothing else on the horizon. And there's just this idea that you're not going to hit the tree. And I know for at least for me as a 33-year-old, it's easy to look at other countries and go, well, of course, it's Russia or it's communist China. But, in the United States, New York State, you're like, no, no, it can't happen here. And we're just slowly going towards it faster and faster. But Bobbie's been on here before, so for Senator Burrell, would you please introduce yourself to my audience?
Sure. First of all, thank you very much for having me on. I'm Senator George Borello. I represent the 57th Senate District in New York State, which is the map behind me. It's actually it encompasses five counties and about 320,000 people. And my just as my background, I'm a business owner, entrepreneur. I started my own business at a young age. I am in the restaurant business. My wife and I operate a few restaurants in Western New York, and we employ over 200 people. So I know what it's like to live in a state that is hostile toward small businesses and has done everything it can to destroy small business. But I've been a state senator for about 4 years now, a little over 4 years. I came in a special election in 2019, and since I've been here, I have seen New York State become an absolute dictatorship. And under one party rule, I have seen the results of that. And we're seeing it every day. New York State has quickly become a third world nation where the criminals rule the streets, the government's corrupt, and you don't know from day to day if you're going to be safe. And that's really the New York we live in right now. And myself and my Republican colleagues are doing everything we can to push back, but we need more of us. And that's why I'm in this fight. I can be like other people, you know, sell everything, pack up, move to Florida, but that's a temporary solution at best. And I don't want to leave the state. I love the state. I love where I live. My family's here. My friends are here. My businesses are here, and I want to fight. And that's why I joined this lawsuit with Bobbie Cox, an amazing patriot who's also given up so much to be in this battle.
And there's a guy I have on here all the time, Dale Comstock. He was the youngest ever member of Delta Force, and he always talks about just either destroy the objective, or if it's overwhelming and there's no chance of survival, break contact. And breaking contact is one thing to do, but you break contact when you're in a third world nation or some Soviet bloc nation and you defect and try to, through some rat line or through some cargo ship get to the United States. There's nowhere to defect to in from the United States. It is the last stand. Sure, you could go further inwards, or like you said, go down to Florida or go out into the mountains, but they will eventually come for you. There is no running from this, and it's almost elementary. You almost kind of feel silly saying it. Like I've been banned from YouTube, from iTunes, from Reddit, and from Twitter, and I always say, when we're like 5 years old, we learned sticks and stones can break my bones, right? But words can never hurt me. With bullying, it's the same thing. It's when I was little, my dad would always say, like, you guys don't start a fight, but you finish it. So we wouldn't do anything, but if if a brother started it, you'd hit him and you'd have dad's full, like you'd sign off on it. So bullies only understand that. And if you run from New York or run from Florida or run from wherever, they're just going to keep going. So, Bobbie, could you please, so people are probably sick and tired of my voice already, could you please explain what the current state is of the legislation? I know that you have been fighting it pro bono and been doing a hero's work.
Yes, sure. Thanks, Tommy. So, for anyone that hasn't seen me on your show before, I'm an attorney here in New York. I've been practicing for 25 years. And basically, this quarantine lawsuit, uh, Senator Borello is my lead plaintiff. I'm also representing Assemblyman Chris Tague and Congressman Mike Lawler, together with a citizens group called Uniting New York State. So, we sued the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, and her Department of Health back in 2022. So we're going back 2 years now, over this regulation, which actually is not legislation. It didn't go through the New York State legislature, which is part of the basis of our lawsuit, because only the legislature can make law. And this regulation, they called it a regulation, they called it a rule. But in actuality, it was a law, and it was trying to change long-standing existing quarantine law, which we've had in New York State since 1953. But agencies, the governor, they can't change laws. They can't make laws. Only the legislature can do that. So this lawsuit is about separation of powers, and the governor and her Department of Health overstepped their power. They created this horrendous regulation, and anybody that's not familiar with it, I suggest you read up on it. I have lots of information about it on my website, coxlawyers.com. There's information about it on Plaintiff Uniting New York State website, which is unitingnys.com. But very briefly, it allowed the Department of Health to pick and choose which New Yorkers they could lock up or lock down, which means they could have locked you down in your house, but they also could have removed you from your home and put you into a facility of their choosing. You would have no say. There were no time restrictions, so they could have locked you up or locked you down for days or weeks or months. There were no age restrictions, so they could have done it to you or your child or your grandchild. And there was no process by which you could regain your freedom once they locked you up or locked you down. So when we were having oral arguments in front of the trial court judge 2 years ago, he asked the attorney general, who's representing the governor, let's say you take a family and let's say you put them into quarantine somewhere in a facility or a hospital, let's say. Once they're in there, how do they get out? And there was a very exaggerated pause. And then finally, the attorney general's office said, well, I guess they could hire a lawyer and they could sue us. So, no due process, no need to prove you were sick, which is the most obscene part of this whole thing. So they didn't have to prove you were sick. They didn't have to prove you were exposed to somebody who was sick. And it didn't have to be a state of emergency. So it was complete totalitarian power that they gave themselves in violation of our state laws, in violation of the Constitution. So the judge struck it down. And of course, the governor appealed, attorney general appealed last year. And we got an appellate court decision a couple months ago, basically throwing the case out, saying my plaintiffs don't have standing, which is not only counterintuitive to logic, but it also is actually in opposition to longstanding Court of Appeals case law here in New York State. So we are appealing that. I filed our appeal with the Court of Appeals last week. So we're waiting to hear on that, whether or not they're going to take the case. But yeah, it's horrendous, Tommy. It's unbelievable. I mean, you don't think this is happening in the United States of America, but I am telling you, because I've spent the past 2 years of my life fighting this case, it is happening, and they are fighting tooth and nail for this power.
There's an audiobook, or I guess a book. It's a real tome of a book. It's about 30 or 40 hours, but it's by Professor Nicholas Voschman, and it's called K.L. which I guess is the original German translation for concentration camps. what people don't realize is that it didn't start with Auschwitz. And I'm guilty of thinking that of, oh, they just rounded everyone up. Of course, it just happened so quickly. No, man, for years it started so slowly that there are early stories of the guards and the inmates just drinking gin and like playing rummy together. You could write, like your mom or dad could come visit you and you'd be arrested for like 24, 48 hours and you'd get out. It was so creeping and insidious that when we look back and go, how did it happen? Well, it happened because it was like a rising tide. It was just every wave, just when you're sitting on the beach and every wave is just noticeably coming maybe like an inch closer, but not much more. Well, and then you look at a time lapse of hours later and it will swallow the entire beach. So that is what's happening. And you know, it's one thing if you roll your eyes at people who are always, banging the alarm, but I think we all saw in the last 4 years or so just how quickly the absolutely surreal became reality of National Guard in the streets, of people turning into brown shirts and ratting on one another. So the idea that this isn't going to keep creeping, it's gonna, oh, that's a conspiracy. I think Roseanne Barr shared it on her Instagram like a month or two ago. I showed you, Bobbie, and people are saying, oh, she's a conspiracy theorist, and I was like, no, this is the legislation, and eventually it's going to shift to, okay, well, it's just New York. Okay, well, it's just New England. All right, well, it's only for severe illness. Okay, well, it's for the cold. So Senator Borello, what does the average person in New York and really the rest of the United States need to know about just how real this is as someone who is in a position to see the inner gears turning?
Here's what you need to know. This is not a tool to ensure that people that are truly a public health threat are somehow isolated. We already have that law. We've had it, as Bobbie Ann said, for over 70 years. This is much more sinister. This because it empowers even low-level Department of Health officials to pull someone using the force of law enforcement, pull someone from their home that has been really accused of no crime, with no proof whatsoever this person is any kind of a danger, with no proof this person is sick, with no proof that they've been exposed to anything. And this is not about COVID. It's not even about just highly communicable diseases. That's another excuse I hear from the apologists out there. That this is just for highly contagious diseases like Ebola and COVID. And no, there is a very long list of diseases that are included that would allow the use of this rule. On that list includes diseases that are not communicable whatsoever. It includes, and I'm not kidding here, food poisoning. It includes Lyme disease. It includes toxic shock syndrome. Those are reasons that a public health official could come in and pull you from your home without any proof and without any due process. That is the scary part for New Yorkers. This is something you would see in Nazi Germany, in communist China. This is something you would see in a totalitarian dictatorship where laws are used to exact revenge against political enemies. That's what this rule is.
It's again, when you're little, stranger danger is leave because, the second, I can remember my mom saying it or teacher saying it. The second, someone grabs you and you're a little, 50-pound kid, it's over. You are now, they control you. And, one of the guys I've had on here multiple times, Joe Tedai, former CIA ground branch, which is the apex of special forces. It's above Delta Force and DevGru. Is he teaches a course on just general, survival, what happens if shit hits the fan or if you want to take care of your family. The very first thing he teaches on the very first day is how to get out of zip tie handcuffs. Because, in this guy's words, once you're zip tied, it's over. You are now at their mercy. Everything else, you still have a fighting chance. But the second you're zip tied, it's over. Law enforcement, it's one thing if it's just a bill and kind of in the ether. Law enforcement, men with guns, showing up and taking you. This is as close as you get to the quicksand. Like we're there. The alarm's ringing. The doomsday clock it's at 11:59, and there's just this general idea that it can't happen. But we just saw we just saw how close we almost fell into fascism in 2020 and 2021. I mean,
Mhm.
just in the rearview
Absolutely.
mirror, and it's right there. And there's just this idea that, like, why is this happening on my show? How come this isn't on the news? Like, why are we covering this here? Like
Yeah.
this, I mean, I'm proud of my show, but like I shouldn't be behind this. It shouldn't be Bobbie and I doing this. It should be much bigger. And then also for what I kind of look at is, let's look at the non-nefarious, but still nefarious, but less nefarious. The I was just following autos. At some point, you are just going to find interest, right? Who's constructing these? Are these private companies? Who's looking at this as just I'm just a small businessman and I just build fences, and that would be their excuse. Do either of you know?
Well, they don't have to build anything, which is actually even more heinous. The regulation specifically says that the government can commandeer any building
Oh,
anywhere and turn it into a quarantine or an isolation facility. So it lays out in great detail that they can, if you own a multifamily home, if there's a school, if there's a prison, because in New York State, the governor is emptying the prisons, because the Democrats feel that, we shouldn't really actually have prisons and we shouldn't really actually persecute people that break our laws. We're just going to arrest them, book them, and then set them free so they can keep violating our laws, whether it's the same law over and over again or a different law. So criminals literally have no repercussions in New York State anymore. But they could just turn any building they want into a quarantine facility. They could keep the owner of that facility out of the facility. They can tell you, this is all in the regulation. They can tell you what you can and cannot do while you're in isolation or in quarantine. And about a week or two ago, Senator Borello was in a hearing with the Commissioner of Health here in New York State, who's new. He's not the original commissioner from 2 years ago when we started the lawsuit, but he questioned him and he asked him if, hey, do you have any plans to reissue this rule? Because now that the appellate division, erroneously, I might add, threw out the case based on lack of standing, which is completely bogus, they technically, the Department of Health and the governor, they can now reissue this regulation if they want to. So the appellate court undid all the good work that the trial court did. So, they at any moment, at any day, they could just reissue the regulation. Doesn't matter. They're not elected officials. They don't answer to anybody. They're not accountable to the voters. So this is the problem that we're seeing in this country. It's not just happening in New York State. It's happening at the federal level and it's happening in other states. The government has gone completely rogue. They do whatever they want. They don't care about the Constitution. They don't care about the laws. They don't care about the citizenry. And then their attitude is, well, catch me if you can. I'm going to do this. I know I can't do it. I know technically I don't have the power to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then come get me. Come stop me if you can. Bring a lawsuit, which is going to take you a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of resources. And let's see what the court says. If the court tells me to stop, well, maybe I'll stop. If the court doesn't tell me to stop, I'm just going to keep going. And people don't even know that their rights are being trampled upon because they don't teach the Constitution anymore. They purposely do not have civics classes in our schools anymore. They don't even teach cursive anymore. Okay, so the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, all these founding documents are written in cursive. So, you can easily change an online version of the Constitution. And if nobody can read cursive and go back and look and see if it's the correct version or interpretation, you're stuck. I mean, it's horrendous. People don't know what's going on. And like you said, mainstream media is not really covering this. I mean, it's been minimal, the coverage. I think maybe Senator Borello and I separately have been on Newsmax a couple times about this. I've been on OAN a couple times about this. I've been on Epoch Times a couple times about this. But where's Fox News? Where's MSNBC? Where's ABC? Where's NBC? Where are all the major networks covering the fact that I have a group of New York State lawmakers suing the governor over a heinous regulation that she had no power to make? Where's that headline?
Hmm.
It's absurd. It's completely absurd.
I think the only way is something that's probably not surprising is you'd have to find some mutual incentive. I always look back to when I was in college and I was in a fraternity, and they'd go around. I remember one semester they went around and they wanted all the fraternities to get all their members to go donate blood, and the the show up was like less than 1%. So finally, the guy in charge of the Greek life just took some like allotted funding from something for Greek Week and was like, whoever has the most people show up, and basically it's like using a promo code and saying, "Oh, PiCap sent me. We'll deliver 10 kegs to your house." And within like 24 hours, the uptick went to like 98%, and they got more blood donated in I think like 2 days than they had in like the previous decade. And it's just because incentive. You just had to align incentives. So with that, Senator Borello, what would it take for people's incentive to be aligned? Specifically, I would imagine politicians. Is that what it takes? Is for people to ask their politicians, what are you doing? How are you supporting this? How are you against this? And obviously shedding light on it. But is that something that would work?
Well, there's no doubt about it that grassroots pushback is what it's really going to take. It's for people to understand what's going on, and we're seeing a little bit of that. We've seen some of that. We've had some people show up at town hall meetings, at some of my colleagues' town hall meetings, asking them, "What are you doing about this? Or do you support this?" But unfortunately, it's not enough. And I think part of the problem is that there's so many distractions in our world today, and people don't see this as a threat. Look at the migrant crisis, the self-created migrant crisis, the so-called migrant crisis. This has been going on for 3 years, but now all of a sudden that it's impacting people in New York City and Chicago. All of a sudden, people are starting to pay attention. All of a sudden, it's now reluctantly and begrudgingly being covered on mainstream media because they have no choice at this point. That's what it's going to take. So, what is it going to take? Is it going to take the reinstitution of this law, of this rule, excuse me, which is a pretend law, and is it going to take someone actually being quarantined against their will before it takes shape, and people start to actually see in front of them the reality? I don't know, but I would hope that, and Bobbie Ann spoke to it. Most people don't understand the freedom of the Constitution, and most people are willing to. Unfortunately, I shouldn't say most, but it appears like many people are willing to give up their vital freedoms, their essential freedoms, if they think it's somehow going to make them safer. And Benjamin Franklin spoke to this, one of our founding fathers, that those would sacrifice essential liberty in order for some temporary security deserve neither. And he was right. And I think that's the phase we're in right now. The pandemic taught the little dictators around the world, particularly here in New York State, what they could get away with. And it trained them that all we need is a little bit of fear, a little bit of misinformation, and we can do whatever we want.
Mm. And you being in New York, I read in December a book about Teddy Roosevelt, and I'm just thinking like it is so he is spinning at light speed in his grave right now because he hated any help from anyone when he was courting his wife while in college. I think his horse literally broke a leg, and I think his quote was like, "Nonsense. I'll walk in between classes," and he would walk like 8 miles in the winter, just going there and like wouldn't take any help, wouldn't take any invites or anything on anyone else's horse. He was just went there and there's like three-piece suit and was just like won her over in the winter. And it really is just it's he's from New York. He is that guy. He would go in there and they would call him the dude, which I guess in the 1800s was an insult. They call him the dude, but he didn't care. They would say he was terrifying. You could hear his like teeth chattering because he would bite down on words, and people would say like, other politicians would be like, I didn't even know what he was saying. I was just so scared he was gonna bite me. And it's like that is what New York is. It's supposed to be that fire. You're supposed to have Teddy Roosevelt who would just, you know, wrestle a bear if he had to. And it's embarrassing to see what's happening now. But what you said is honestly, I think that's what it's going to take. It's going to take somebody. It's going to have to start happening to people, and it's a horrible thing to say, but I legit it's when you're gaining weight, right? And all of a sudden you catch yourself at an angle in a mirror and you go, oh God, all right, stopped, all right, I'm done, I'm I'm finished. That's what it takes, or when pants don't fit as well.
Been there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's February. I'm you do that Thanksgiving, Christmas, or holiday eating, and then mid-January you have that moment where you go, wait, the holidays are over. This has to stop now. This is not good. I think that's what it's going to take. I vividly remember in 2020 on Reddit seeing a clip of, I think that is right after George Floyd, the National Guard. I forget what city it was in, and somebody had been filming it from their front porch, and it was 5 or 6 guys walking in like a V formation down some suburban cul-de-sac, all in the stormtrooper gear, and the people were recording, and they looked, and somebody, one of the guys in the SWAT outfits pointed at them and said, "Get back inside." And they said, "Why?" And then they said, "Light them up." They all had rubber bullets, and they all turn and start firing. And that is the clip that went crazy. And within a day or two, I think the National Guard withdrew from that city because it looked so bad. That's probably what it's going to take. And it's awful to say, but it's what it's going to take. We respond to personal stimuli. No one cares until we are animals. We ultimately don't care so long as we have food, water, running sewage, and a place to lay our head at night. No one really cares. Bobbie, is there any outcome that is not as pessimistic as mine?
No, I mean, the problem is that the mainstream media has been captured. And here in New York State, I mean, nationwide, I'm sure, to some extent, but certainly in New York State, they don't report on the atrocities that are going on. Yes, this quarantine regulation and the lawsuit is one, but there are many others. They're not migrants, they're illegal. They are illegal aliens that should not be in this country. Joe Biden is inviting them in. He has literally opened the border. We have no border at all at the Senate right now. If you just even follow the Border Patrol, the Border Patrol Union, which is the national, all the Border Patrol members can join a union, obviously. So the president of the National Border Control Union is all over social media saying that Biden and his administration have opened the border. His members, the Border Patrol agents, are prohibited from doing their job. So you have a situation where, look, we have immigration laws. They've been on the books for a long time. Just because the president refuses to enforce them and is actively ignoring them and violating them doesn't mean the laws go away. So those people coming across the border, and by the way, in 2023 alone, 169 terrorists were caught coming across the border in just 2023. Forget 2022 and 2021 because there were more then. And those are only the ones that were caught, right? So all the getaways, they call them gotaways, but all the people that get away and aren't actually caught at the border, we have no idea who they are. We don't even know the ones that are coming in across the border. We don't know who they are either. And the Biden administration will stand on national television and give press conferences saying, "Oh, of course we know who they are. Of course we're vetting them." No, they're not. Listen to what the Border Patrol agents are saying. They are not vetting them. They're helping them across the border. They're lifting the razor wire in Texas, helping them across the border, putting them into trucks or vans or buses or whatever, and they get, shipped wherever they want to go in the United States of America. They're given food, they're given money, they're given clothing, they're given free housing, especially in New York State, which is a sanctuary state, not just a sanctuary city. The entire state is a sanctuary state, something that the governor can easily reverse, but won't. And the same thing with Mayor Adams in New York City. He can easily reverse sanctuary city state, but he won't. because they're bringing them in because they want to turn them all into voters. And if anybody thinks I'm making that up, there's a lawsuit that was brought I think it was 2 years ago. Yeah, 2022. The New York City Council passed an ordinance saying that non-citizens could vote in their elections. They were sued, Mayor Adams, the city council, whatever, they were sued. A judge struck it down and said that is an illegal law. You cannot make a law like that. Our Constitution is clear. Only citizens can vote. And Mayor Adams is appealing. He's appealing the decision. So he's using taxpayer dollars to appeal that decision. Why do you think he's appealing the decision? Because he wants to give people who are not citizens in this country the right to vote. People need to wake up. Absolutely horrendous. And this year is 2024. We have a presidential election. We also have a golden opportunity in New York State because every single New York State senator and every single New York State assembly member is up for election in November. So you can wipe the slate clean. You can get rid of every single one of them and you can replace them. And that's what needs to happen here in New York State. This state is out of control because it is under the governance of one party. I don't care what political party it is. One party should not have complete power over the people. You need at least two parties, preferably more, so that there's a conversation, so that the diversified interests of your electorate are actually being represented. But here in New York State, we've had one party rule for over 5 years, and this state is being destroyed because of it. So people need to wake up and get involved. It's if they don't, then your apathy is going to be your downfall.
Aren't they using schools in New York to house immigrants? Aren't they kicking out students?
They've been using them in part, yes. And they're using other public spaces. They're using a parkland, which is illegal because they did not get a parkland alienation authorization from the New York State government. But again, as Bobbie Ann clearly pointed out, they're acting with impunity because there is no one to counter that. And they've done things that are patently illegal, patently unconstitutional. But those things don't automatically undo themselves. You have to bring a lawsuit, which was previously described, expensive, lengthy, and subject to what is now a compromised judiciary. But yeah, they're using schools. We had recently a school in Brooklyn, I believe it was, that kids had to go remote because they were housing illegal immigrants in there. So it continues to happen. It's going to happen more because New York City claims to be bursting at the seams.
Well, I just happen to know that I think it's even ahead of of London and Hong Kong is shell companies owning real estate in specifically Manhattan. The Time Warner Center, I think something around 140 of the 190 units. And this is for anyone that doesn't know, these are top tier. This is big money. This is the 1% of the 1% are empty. They're vacant. Same with I think 432 Park Ave, the tall skinny tower, the new Central Park Tower that has the highest penthouse in the world, even surpassing those in the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. The majority of these buildings are empty, and they are just they're ways to store foreign capital. I think Aneet Agarwal was a mining magnate somewhere in India, I think, and he poisoned a river and he took all of his money and just bought a bunch of penthouses in New York City. And you can do them under shell companies and shell companies under shell companies. And New York is kind of the mecca for it because they build these giant towers. That's why you see all the new super tall, super skinnies all along Central Park. I mean, is there any way to get legislation to start housing immigrants in there and see if maybe if that changes is when the billionaires when their penthouses are now used? Is that I can't think of anything else that would actually work. It just, as Bobbie said, it's apathy. There's general apathy. And I don't think when I was little and something would happen, I had three brothers and no one would fess up to what happened. Who took the candy or who did this, or who did that. Finally, my dad would take the remote away from us, or he'd take the power cable out of the Nintendo 64 and say, "All right, well," he would turn us on one another. He'd be like, "All right, we'll find out who did it, and you can have video games again." man, we would solve that crime really quickly. It would get right to the bottom of it because it'd be like, I want to play Star Fox. I don't care who took the fruit roll up. Just somebody go confess. Uh, Is that the only way it would work? Is to start housing immigrants or start making these medical concentration camp facilities? Be like, hey, they're not that bad. They've got a 1,400-foot view over Central Park. I mean, I'm half joking, but I'm half not. I legitimately don't know what else to do. It's when I would interview Dr. McCullough and Dr. Malone in 2021, and I would talk about these things, but I had 4,000 subscribers on YouTube, and then later in the year they went on Joe Rogan, they got 50 million downloads, and then the White House makes a comment about it. At a certain point, you kind of have to ruffle the feathers of some important people, and it's sad, but it's the only thing that eventually does work. It's to make it hurt at home. Is there any way to do any of this? Because apparently what Bobbie's doing, going through the actual legal process, or what I'm doing, trying to bring attention to it, or what Senator Borello is doing, giving me the time of day on a Thursday morning to talk about it, none of this is working. So at what point do you kind of have to lean in and escalate to de-escalate, make it worse for them? Is there any logic to any of that, or is this wishful thinking?
No, I think it makes a lot of sense. One of my favorite quotes of all time is the definition of a liberal is someone whose interests aren't at stake at the moment. And that's just the truth. It's easy to, look at the sanctuary stuff. Okay, a bunch of progressive Democrats, wealthy people, most of them, got together and said, we're going to be a sanctuary city. And we're more compassionate. We're more enlightened than the rest of you. And they patted themselves on the back, and they had wonderful things to talk about at their cocktail parties. And then all of a sudden, these people showed up in New York City, and now they're freaking out because they don't know what to do. Well, you invited them. You said, "Come to New York City, come to New York State, and if you come here, we will protect you. We will feed you. We will house you. We will give you medical coverage indefinitely. If you commit a crime, no problem. We'll still let you go." That just happened yesterday. We saw, 5 police officers were assaulted by illegal immigrants, and they were all released without bail, and they will not be deported because New York City is a sanctuary city. Therefore, they are protected from the federal authorities by the government of New York City. Uh, and one showed his appreciation by giving a double middle finger on his way out the courthouse as he was released without bail. So, when do the liberal elite in New York City say, "Yeah, we created this, and we can't take this anymore"? We'll see. My hope is in this election cycle, as Bobbie Ann pointed to, every member of the Senate, the Assembly is up. That people understand that this didn't happen by accident. This is intentional, and the chaos that you're experiencing is courtesy of one party rule here in New York State. Period.
People are I'm going to jump in, Tommy. You know
Yeah,
what?
yeah, yeah. Go for it.
Because it boils my blood when people just talk and talk and talk and nobody takes action. So here's what's going on, and people don't understand because they don't take the time to pay attention. That's all you need to do is pay attention. Turn off, NBC, MSNBC, CNN. Turn off that crap. That is complete propaganda. And put down the New York Times. Okay, you need to understand what's going on. The military, I understand. Our military just got rid of the requirement that you have to have a high school diploma in order to enroll or apply. Okay, so where do you think that's going? We have sitting members of Congress saying we should allow illegal aliens in our military. Okay, and then what does the military do? They get rid of the requirement to have a high school diploma in order to apply. So what do you think's coming next, folks? I mean, do you understand what is going on? We have no idea who these people are coming across the border. They are not vetted. They don't even have to have a valid ID. We don't know what diseases they have. We don't know if they've ever been inoculated against any diseases. We don't know if they have a rap sheet longer than my arm in their home country. We don't know if they're wanted by the police if they're a criminal, if they like our country and our culture, or are they coming here to harm us or not? Are they all criminals? Of course not, but it doesn't matter. They have to come through the proper channels. Ports of entry. We have many ports of entry in this country. Go to a port of entry if you really want to come to our country and do good. Go through the proper channels, right? You don't just crawl across, swim across the Rio Grande River and then crawl under, I guess Cortina wire, right? We have barbed wire now lining Texas, or climb over a container that has been put there to block you, or, go through the port of entry. Why wouldn't you? If you wanted to go into a different country, well, I don't care what country, Russia, China, who, by the way, they aren't having any illegal migration problems. If you look into that, okay, scratch your head hard. So China, Russia, I don't care, Japan, you want to go into Japan? Do you think you should swim across a river or the Pacific Ocean and then just crawl under some barbed wire? Or you think you should go through the proper channel? I mean, it's unbelievable what's going on. And the fact that more Americans, are not up in arms about this, calling and writing and tweeting their representatives it's an abomination. It really is. Now I'm going to start blaming the people for not getting involved and not doing enough, because this is do or die. This is do or die. If we do not have a change in the White House in November, this country is done. I don't care if people call me a conspiracy theorist. I don't care what the heck you want to call me. Mark my words, because everything that the conspiracy theorists, the so-called conspiracy theorists, have been barking about the last few years seems to be coming true. And you're going to wake up and you're going to have zero rights, you're going to have zero freedoms, and then my phone's going to be ringing off the hook. Oh, can you help me? Oh, can you do this for me? Oh, I just got this happened to me, that happened to me. No, I can't help you. Where were you 5 years ago when I was screaming and shouting that you need to get involved and pick up the phone and call your representative, or run for your local school board, or run for your town council, or run for your county legislature? Where were you then? You were too busy watching Netflix and having popcorn.
As you know, I don't have many credentials, as I do wear slippers while I do these interviews, but one of the few things I do have, and I always talk about it because I'm a broken record, is I did get into medical school in 2013, and as an undergrad, I did do independent research under professor, and it's you can still find it on PubMed, and it's the the effects of salinity on nickel toxicity to the two Eurohaline fish species Cryptolebius marmoratus and Fungus heteroclitus. And the entire thing going into research was that there wasn't an answer at the end of the book, right? You do organic chemistry, you study, you can try your hardest, and eventually you can go back and you can find the answers to the questions and go, all right. Or if you really need that, you go get a tutor, and they can walk you through SN1 and SN2 reactions and protons and benzene rings. Someone has the answers and they can help you. With independent research, it was challenging, and it's why it looked good on one's resume, is because there was no answer. You'd go to the professor and you'd say, okay, we added magnesium to this one, we added calcium carbonate to this one, we added sodium to that one, and the sodium fish are living a lot longer. The professor would say, why? And you got to know why. And she would go, no, why? We don't know. That's why we're doing this. That's why it's a publication. That's why a publication is impressive. The entire idea was that you threw out every accepted answer and you embraced every potential answer. In science, that's called being a researcher, and you've got the right stuff to be a doctor. If you look at geopolitics, you're a conspiracy theorist. So just on that note, that's the one that always burns me, is on one thing, it's the best thing you can have on your resume. Anywhere else, and you're a conspiracy theorist. And to what Bobbie was saying about the illegal immigrants and lowering the standards for military enlistment, this isn't new. This is as old as the oldest empires. You cannot get. I'm in New England, right? You couldn't get me to, or when I went to the University of Georgia, if you gave me a gun and told me to go be security and start locking up people, even if they weren't my friends, I'd eventually be like, no, I see that guy all the time at the gym, or I see that guy at the bar, or no, I know her. Like, I'm not doing this. It's what empires have been doing for tens of thousands of years, is you take people from point A and you bring them to point B and have them enforce laws. You take people from point B and bring them to point A and have them enforce laws. There's no familiarity, there's no love of that area, there's no one you recognize. And the farther apart the 2 points, the better. And if you don't think about that, ask yourself off just off the top of your head, what do you know about Yemen? What do you know about Syria? And the reality is you probably don't know much. I don't know much. And the reality is because it's over there, they look differently, and that's what it is. And that's a sad thing to answer. But the reality is deep down, none of us probably know what's going on in South Africa. None of us truly know. And it's because it's over there. Oh, is the war still going on? Oh yeah. It's just another name. It's the Houthis. It's Hezbollah. It's Hamas. It's the Azov Battalion. It's all over there. And soon it's going to be over here. So, you know, I guess to kind of wrap this up, I think about the tweet in 2020, and it was, I forget who, but it was somebody in one of the cities that was lit on fire, the fiery but mostly peaceful protests. And it was somebody in some nice, it was an actor. It was somebody in some nice apartment complex. And they were like tweeting pictures of the police station, and they were like, rise up. And they were doing like the fist, like the hammer sickle, like, let's go, people. And 2 hours later, there was this frantic tweet in all caps, and it was, "Where are the police? Like they're breaking into my building." And it's like, hey man, once you open that box, the fire is gonna go everywhere. The fire, don't be surprised when you throw fire in the local forest and it burns down your cabin too. Well, I wanted to burn down his cabin. The fire doesn't care. The fire sees fuel. So that's kind of where we're going. And I unfortunately I don't see where it's gonna go unless some people get burned. They have their own property damage. Some very important people, have it start to touch their home. Their car gets broken into. Their Bentley gets a cinder block through it. Their penthouse, their $90 million penthouse in Midtown, starts having to house people. I think that's the only way it's going to change. But to maybe end on a more positive note, uh, Senator Borello, what can the average person in New York State do? And I know for Bobbie, that her links are in the description. You guys can go to her website. You can go follow her. You can go help her. She's doing all of this pro bono. But for you, Mr. Borello, what can the average person do to just even put a drop in the bucket?
Well, this is what I would say, and this is true at every level of government, but particularly at the state and federal level. Everybody looks at the New York State legislature as a whole and thinks they're doing a horrible job, but my guy's okay. And I would say that, to those folks that, and I'm going to be a little bit partisan here and say, if you're being represented by a Democrat, check and see how they're voting, because they might tell you one thing, but do another. They supported this stuff. Okay. So when you think your guy's okay, double check that, because they have supermajorities in both the Senate and the Assembly. They can do whatever they want, but that can be changed. And it takes people understanding that, yeah, you know what? I'm a lifelong Democrat. I always vote for Democrats. There, and I come from a family of Democrats. This is not the Democratic Party that my father and grandfather signed up for, the party of the working class. No, this is a party that is catapulting us into a socialist dictatorship. And that's not an exaggeration, it's reality. It is a party that is allowing our nation and our state to be overrun with illegal immigrants, because they somehow think that's going to cement their power permanently. That is the reality today. So look at who is serving you, and I would suggest that you need to look at change. That's the only way. The people have to rise up and demand change.
And at the very least, do some reading. Which philosopher, Plato or Socrates or one of the smart guys said, read often so that you may come across easily information that other men toiled for. Or as former Secretary of Defense General Mattis said, If you have not read hundreds of nonfiction books, or excuse me, if you have not read hundreds of historical books by the time you are an adult, you are functionally illiterate. This is just what there's really nothing new under the sun. Sure, things change, and what do you mean? It's we're not the Roman Empire. We're different. I have an iMac, and I have glasses, and I have a vacuum sealed thermos. It's different. Look at me. I'm in a polo. No, man, it's all the same. It's all the same things. Well, when you look at your dad and you go, "Oh, what's that quote? By the time you realize your dad was right, you'll have a son that thinks you're wrong." And so many times, like getting caught drinking, thought I would. I remember the first time I got caught drinking, I was like 17, and my dad had to come pick me up at my friend's house. And I tried to say, this is the first time I've ever drank, and he's like, really? What? How ironic that you get in trouble, and this is the first one. Man, what are the odds of that? And I actually thought I was pulling a quick one on him. Man, you look back over millennia, and it just keeps repeating itself, repeating itself, repeating itself, repeating itself. But then you look at now and you go, no, but we're different. I'm different. I'm going to do it differently, right? No, I'm going to figure it out. Like teams that remember back in like the early 2000s, all the football teams that were bringing on, I think Terrell Owens, right? And he's so great. It's like, man, he's a cancer on the team. He brings drama. No, we're different. I'll do it differently. No, you won't. No, you won't. And that's kind of where it is. So, um, guys, if you could please go follow Senator Borello and Miss Cox on Twitter, as I am permanently banned. And if you could at least, I don't know, go throw a couple bucks to Bobbie to help, because she is doing this pro bono. And at the very least, I don't care. Don't even use my podcast. Rip the audio and upload it as your own. I don't care. Just share the story. At the very least, just share the story, because there's some cheesy quote I love though, and it's no one single water droplet thinks it's responsible for the flood. Do something. Legitimately, just do something so you can pat yourself on the back and say, I did something. If at the very least, so you can sleep a little better. Just do something. So, guys, with that, um, closing remarks, Miss Cox, Senator Borello.
Yeah, I definitely thank you for taking the time, Tommy, and just spreading the word. It's super important. There are horrendous bills, other than this quarantine regulation that I've been fighting for 2 years and probably will all of this year as well. Other than that, there are other horrendous things going on in New York State in the legislature. There are bills that, they want to give children of any age the right to make their own medical decisions behind the parents' back. So the parents wouldn't even know their child is getting a procedure done or a surgery or taking certain medications or, hormone blockers or whatever. And this is all the Democrats. The Democrats are behind this. Look it up online. It's all public information. It tells you who's sponsoring the bill, who's co-sponsoring the bill, who's signing on. It's horrendous. You have no idea. They're trying to weaken election integrity in New York State, not strengthen it. You don't need an ID to vote in New York State, which is ridiculous. You need an ID to check into a hotel. You need an ID to buy a pack of cigarettes. You need an ID to go into a bar and buy an alcoholic beverage, but you don't need an ID to exercise the most important right you have as an American, which is the right to vote and choose who's going to represent you in the lawmaking process. Give me a break. They want to have people walk up on election day, walk up into a voting center and be able to vote, register right then and there, no proof of residency or you've been in this district for 30 days before. But no, they're making it so easy for anybody and everybody to vote, whether or not you have the right legally to vote in this state. And when it starts in New York, it spreads. People are like, oh, why don't you leave New York? You're crazy. You're still in New York. Why don't I? If I leave New York and nobody stays to fight, this is going to spread to your state. I guarantee you. I don't care what color your state is, if it's red, if it's blue, if it's purple. I don't care how far away from New York you are. It is going to spread. Eventually it'll get to you. It might take a few years, but eventually it'll get to you. And then where are you going to run and hide? You're going to run and hide nowhere. So, the idea of like, oh, just leave New York. What's wrong with you people? No, we don't stay and we don't fight. This spreads like a cancer across the country, and the country's done. you know, California is also really bad. They have horrendous bills, and some of them have become laws. But when bills fail and don't become laws, it's because the people pushed back, because the politicians are so corrupt, they're going to follow what their special interest donors tell them to do. They're going to follow what their party boss, who's funding their campaigns for reelection, tells them to do. The people have to stand up and say, no, you work for me. Absolutely not. I'm not going to stand for this. And when enough people do that, then you have a chance that the corrupt politicians will listen, but not until the people stand up. So this is about 2024 is about the people taking control of their rights and their freedoms and voting out all those politicians that don't give a crap and are not following what you want as a constituent and what the Constitution demands that they do. So this is all in the hands of the people. This is the power of the people. I give speeches all across this state. In fact, I'm going to one tonight that's like 2 hours away from here, trying to educate people about their rights. What does the Constitution say? What can the government do and what can't the government do? How can you get involved, right? But we need thousands of attorneys doing that. Not just one or two or three. We need thousands of attorneys doing that. We need thousands of podcasters like you spreading this word. This is how we're going to get control of this country again. Otherwise, forget it. This will become, I guarantee you, this will become a dictatorship in the very near future. It's horrendous. People need to, please, if you want to follow me on Twitter, my handle is attorney_Cox. And if you want more information about the quarantine lawsuit or other lawsuits that I'm working on to fight back against the tyrannical overreach, just go to my website, which is coxlawyers.com. It's COX lawyers.com. There's a ton of information. Share the information. Like Tommy said, you want to do something that's just, make you feel good that you're in the fight. Take the link to this or go on my website, take one of the links to one of my other, 500 interviews or articles that I've written and share it. Just post it on your social media, send it to your friends in your email chat or your text chat. It makes a difference. This is how we're going to have to get this country back, because I just wrote a Substack a couple of weeks ago. This country is on life support was the title of my article. And I'm a fellow at the Brownstone Institute. So a lot of times Brownstone will republish my Substack articles, and then sometimes Epoch Times will pick it up as well. But I often write about issues involving the Constitution, involving your rights. People really, it's all free information. You don't have to pay a penny. You can sign up for my Substack and follow me on social media. But please do, because even if you don't have the time to volunteer or you don't have the money to donate, if you share the information, somebody else will. Somebody else will have time to volunteer. Somebody else will have time, money to donate. So it's so important. Just sharing things online is a big help.
And I was gonna say, look at someone like Senator Borello, who's coming on my show. Do you know how often you see someone who's talking about their important cause, and then you contact them and you go, "Hey, I'd love to have you on my show," and they want to know how much are you going to pay them? What is your reach? How can they? And you're like, "Wait, what? I thought you wanted to push this thing. I thought you thought this was no. We need a bigger reach." And it's like, oh, you don't actually care, and it's the same thing. So I mean, at 10 a.m. on a Thursday, Senator Borrell comes on my show, doesn't know me at all, comes in a suit and tie with an American flag behind him and brings his A game. So this is, I mean, conjure up your Teddy Roosevelt. I mean, you are in New York, and my favorite quote from him, and I believe it's from him. I really hope I'm not misquoting him. Is by far and away the best aspect of this life is working hard towards something worth working hard towards. It really is. This is something worth working.
That's excellent.
He's the best. I
proud that he's a New Yorker.
Yeah, dude, he's so cool. I read a book on him, and I told you in December, I became the biggest fanboy of him ever. He went out west and had this farming plantation, and they all made fun of him because he was educated and then wore glasses, and he was so hell-bent on getting the respect of the cowboys that one of the cowboys regaled this story They're like, I saw this guy in a three-piece suit and his monocle's flying. He's on the back of this bucking bronco and he broke his collarbone and he got off after and he refused any help. And that's when I realized, I was like, this is a great man. Maybe he's a nerd, maybe he's a bit crazy, but this is a great man. And some other guy said he's gonna kill that dude from New York. Teddy went to his house on a Sunday morning and knocked on his door. Guy opened it. And Teddy looked at him and he goes, I heard you were going to kill me. Are we doing that today? The guy had no idea what to do, and eventually he later said, he's like, and I respected that man the rest of my life. He just showed up and was like, well, let's get on with it. Are we going to kill each other? And so yeah, man, conjure up your Teddy. What would Teddy do? Teddy would be seeing red right now. So, and you know what? If it's worth saving, it'll be saved. And if it's not, America will go by just like the rest. So don't think we're any different, guys, and don't think it won't come for you. Just leave New York. Bob Marley died of cancer that started in his toe. Just leave the toe, man. It's just one toe. I don't know. Doesn't work out well. Guys, thank you so much for your time. Everybody who's watching, thank you so much for watching. Please go.
Thank you.
Please go follow Senator Borello. Please go follow Bobbie and Cox. You can't follow me on Twitter because I'm banned. It's already starting. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. God bless. And
Thank you.
until next time, much love. Bob.